I built this quote unquote real estate empire and this $1 million net worth on an active duty enlisted salary I bought my first house as a sergeant. So my taxable W-2 income wasn't $40,000. Now, when you factor in benefits and everything, it was closer to 60, 70, 80. But my taxable income was like $36,000 the year I bought that first house. And by the time I left the military, it was still under 45 for my taxable like W-2 income. And so I preface with the fact that like I didn't have the income, so I can justify the fact that that wasn't really the problem. The problem is people make $2,000, they spend $2,000.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Rich Your Soul. Today's guest is David Pere, who went from being an enlisted in the military to being a millionaire. Listen in to hear his story. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Rich Your Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richyoursoul.com. Today's quote comes from John Shedd. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. I wonder how many people live life like a ship in harbor. The reality is you can't steer the ship until it's underway. The rudder is useless when it's docked. Life's like that too. You need to take action and start moving towards your goals. And then you can pivot and change course going forward. This is another in our series recorded live at GoBundance in Park City, Utah. GoBundance is all about living the tenets we've talked about on Rich Your Soul. And now you get to meet people living this life. They vary in age and success, but each of them has found or is finding their path to the ultimate life. They'll share how they did that and the lessons learned along the way. I hope they inspire you to find your tribe and take action to live your ultimate life. These bonus episodes will be out every Thursday and have GB in the episode number, and it'll be Series 3 so that it's easy for you to find them. This segment is brought to you by the Profit Answer Man podcast, where we help business owners ensure they are always profitable and can afford the life of their dreams. Check it out if you are a business owner. Can you imagine going from being an enlisted soldier to millionaire? I know a few ex-military people who have done this. They've taken different paths, but the principles are always the same. And so learn the principles and you can also build wealth just like they did. David joined the military and the Marine Corps in August of 2008. Since that time, he has lived in or traveled to many unique places around the world, including a combat tour in Afghanistan. David got started in real estate investing in 2015. He house hacked a duplex with the FHA loan and lived in it for a while until he got married to his beautiful wife, Kimberly, and they received orders to go to Hawaii. While stationed in Hawaii, David bought a 10-unit apartment in Missouri and has continued success with real estate investing. Now he has over 100 rental units in his portfolio. David's achieved complete financial freedom. Through these experiences, from military to millionaire was born with the goal of teaching service members and veterans how to build wealth through real estate, investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. let's meet my friend David. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, David Pere. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks for having me, Rocky. It's been a long time coming.
It has been a long time coming, and we'll get to that. In the meantime, I'm excited to learn from you today. So let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Yeah, my dad was an accountant for a little while, and then he quit that, and my mom and dad moved from San Francisco to Arkansas to do marriage counseling. They worked with an organization, Family Life, so they lived on support, and we didn't have a whole lot of money. So really my only financial education is that my mother was frugal and did like the Dave Ramsey like envelope system. And I kind of joke about this in my book because I probably still owe her money because I would go into like the gas and be like, "Ooh, I need $20," and then I would try to repay it. And so I didn't really fully understand the implications of like envelope budgeting or being frugal or anything. I just knew that my mom did that stuff and I thought it was weird. And ironically now I do it. But so I would say my family was frugal, but that's probably all I really knew about finances through high school, through probably until I was 25.
What happened to 25?
Somebody was trying to get me into Amway to do the, sell sodas and soft drinks and energy drinks and whatever else Amway sells. And he handed me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, well, I don't really read much. He's like, well, you're driving around a lot as a recruiter. So how about you just take this CD and you listen to it while you drive? And figured, well, he called my bluff, so I'll do that. And then listening to that book totally changed my mindset and was the first time I'd ever heard anyone talk about money in a way that was exciting enough for me to feel interested in it instead of just, like when you grow up, you hear about money and it's like, you feel like you hear the accountant or engineer version of it, which is just like, here's all the facts and they're really dry. Hope you enjoy it. And so that book was the first thing that kind of opened my mind on the path of like, wow, if I do this, I can eventually just kind of be my own guy and do my own thing.
That's very true, as long as you implement it and you do it. So how did your father go from being accounting to what he was doing? That's kind of a shift.
Just a calling. They felt like God was calling them to go. And so the organization is Campus Crusades for Christ. And then under that is an organization, Family Life. And so they felt really powerfully that they were being called to do conferences all over the country, helping people with their marriages. So I grew up as kind of a homeschooled missionary kid where we weren't like starving, but we were very hand-me-down, frugal, if you buy name brand, you're an idiot type family raising.
One of the easiest ways to help people in their marriage is to make them financially sound.
I can't remember if that's the number one or number two reason for divorce is finances. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree. And, it's funny because I think they viewed like the kind of the Dave Ramsey model, the very frugal model as that, which is great for getting you out of debt and not necessarily wrecking your finances, but it doesn't help you achieve that financial freedom, right? And it's kind of interesting to think about it because it's kind of backwards. They raise support for their whole life and, they're in their 60s now. And in theory, they're retiring soon and hopefully they'll be able to, I don't know as much about their finances. I think they'll be able to actually retire and enjoy it. But it's kind of strange when you think back to like, man, what if you spent the first 5 or 10 years of your life really, truly achieving financial freedom? And then you could go do all the missionary service projects you wanted. And because of the financial literacy and the investing, like you could do it without even having to raise support.
You didn't know that you were their retirement plan?
I'm hoping I don't get that phone call. So we talk enough for me to think that things are sound. I haven't sat them down and played the financial planner yet, but their house is paid off, their expenses are low. So I don't know. Hopefully, no.
So we're here at GoBundance. What brought you into GoBundance?
I've been trying to join GoBundance for a long time. It's been on my vision board for probably 2 years, and I probably wanted to be a member for 3 or 4. But as you know, you have to be an accredited, a millionaire net worth and vetted to join. And I wasn't there yet. It took me a while to get there. And the reason I wanted to join, I can't remember who I first heard about it from. I think it was Brandon Turner or David Green talking about this group they were in. And I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. But then I kind of started to just meet more people. And as my network grew and I met more people, a lot of them were Go Bros. And every time I met somebody who was in GoBundance, I was blown away by how like selfless and helpful they were. So prime example is Matt Aitchison. I co-hosted our friend, the millennial real estate investor. I co-hosted. Dan Mackin called me one day. I was like, hey, can you co-host a podcast in like 4 hours? And I was like, yes. And so I actually bought a headset because I was out of town. And so I co-host, and it was Matt Aitchison. And I just remember like at the end of the podcast, him asking like specifically like, hey, how can I help you in your business? And like, you know, very strange because I've done, I don't know, 150, 200 interviews at this point across various podcasts as a host. And I think he's probably one of maybe 2 or 3 people who's ever like asked how they could benefit us at the end of the show, right? Most people don't think that way. And that was a very recurring theme when I met GoBundance members, was like, they're all very generous. They're all very helpful. They all want to reach the rope down and help you up. So I just knew that was the type of people I wanted to be around.
And that is the type of people they are. And just the audience doesn't know this. We were in a mastermind together on podcasting for quite a while, just helping each other figure out how to better produce our shows, how to grow our audience, how to connect. And that was a fun group while it lasted for quite a while, and quite interesting. So that's probably where we got to spend the most time together. So at some point you joined the military, and when did that occur? Right out of college or?
Right out of high school. So my mom actually dragged me to almost every college in Arkansas, trying to convince me to go college and not military. And on my 18th birthday, I went and signed all the paperwork. A week later, I did my physical, and then I just had to wait for boot camp. Came a few months later, but right out of high school. It wasn't some great calling. I mean, at the time, it was literally my reasons for joining the military were essentially, I don't know what I want to study. I don't have money for school, and I don't like school, and I want to leave Arkansas. Well, the military does all of those things really well, right? It'll help me figure out what I do and don't like. It'll pay for college eventually, right? So you can either do tuition assistance while you're in or the GI Bill afterwards. And it'll definitely get you out of town. And so, and then I just kind of fell in love with the stuff I was doing those first few years.
You know, it's interesting. There's another recurring theme that keeps popping up in these interviews. Everyone seems to hate school.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to say to that. I mean, if we're being honest and we're talking that, I used tuition assistance to earn my my associate's degree. And the entire time I was doing it, it was virtual, it was online. I don't know that I ever read any of the required reading other than physics. I passed everything just fine. I didn't feel challenged. I was bored. And by the time I got to the end, I was like, this is a waste of time. I'm not going to use this degree. I don't have any job that I want to do as a bachelor's degree. I was like, I'm never going back. And so I transferred my GI Bill to my kids and said, all right, well, maybe if they want to go to school, it'll cost me less money.
There's always that. So there's a story with you because you started off with a negative net worth, and 5 years you went to become a millionaire so that you could pass the entrance exam for GoBundance with 100 plus rental units. How did that happen?
I guess just consistency, really. Consistency, education, networking. I mean, it's all the same things that everyone else says. It's getting around. I mean, if you boil it all the way down, it's just getting around people who are like-minded and trying to do similar things, and then making sure that, you know, you just kind of follow along on similar journey. So for me, it was, I bought a duplex. I lived in one half. I rented the other half. And then I moved to Hawaii. We lived on a base for 3 years. We tried to buy there, but the market was too hot, and the VA loan still had a limit, which it doesn't anymore, but at least not on your first use. And so we couldn't buy there. So I saved up. I mean, it probably took almost 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years to buy that second property. And there was some creative financing involved, and that was a 10-unit apartment. And then it was probably another year and a half before I bought something else meaningful, and that was another duplex. And it was just kind of small stuff. And then I knew, once I realized that I was making enough for my rentals, I could theoretically quit the military. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to really dive down in this. I'm going to try to find a lot of deals off market. So I don't necessarily want to do wholesaling, but I wanted to find cheaper off market deals and then buy it myself. And that just kind of, you know, we went from one deal or two deals or three deals a year to I held 83 units last year. So a 40 unit hotel, a 23 unit apartment, a 15 unit apartment, single family house, and a fourplex. And then the year prior to that, I'd bought, I don't know, 8 doors. And then I did some of those we flipped, and some of those it just kind of grew very quickly. It was like, okay, well, the finances have been in place where I bought one, and then I bought another, and then I reinvested, and I bought another, and I bought another. And then I just got around the right people who were telling me to think bigger and start marketing to find my own stuff off the MLS. And then I just happened to get started doing that. And then COVID happened, and the market went crazy in my favor. And so I started doing more and more and more and more. And I was able to refinance out of properties I had owned for a few years and use that capital to reinvest. And then, that's the long and short, I guess. It was just buying stuff every chance I found a good deal. And I wish I'd bought more in 2017. I just didn't have money. Man, those things all went up a ton in value since then.
They did. The markets have taken off. You never know what the future's going to bring, which way it's going to go. But real estate tends historically to do well, but all markets are local. So you can look at the demographic trends in your local area. Are they going which way? And America's moving. So, Texas, Florida, Nashville, you almost can't go wrong because everyone's moving out of other areas and moving into those areas. And then I think we're still seeing the ripples of 2008 because a lot of building didn't go on in 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And now we're seeing the crunch because there isn't capacity that came in from that period of time. And the nice thing about real estate is, everybody needs a house. So it's an easy market in that you really don't need to create a need. You just have to fulfill it. And there's a house for everyone, and you just have to find the right opportunity. And then it's just a matter of money, right? Is this the appropriate price for what it is? And if you're good at that, it's pretty simple math.
I agree. I mean, it really is. You can sit down and on a piece of paper, on one side, you can write what the property should rent for. And on the other side, you can write what the mortgage should be and the taxes and the interest and the insurance and the maintenance and everything else. And if the money that should come in from rent is more than all the other numbers, then theoretically you're good, right? So, and I mean, that's the super oversimplified version, but I mean, it works. And then if you factor in the market going up or rents increasing or any of that stuff, the longer you hold, and I don't usually factor appreciation into anything, and I'm in a very non-appreciative market. I mean, I'm in Missouri, so like historically, we don't really go up in value at all. I mean, we do, but much slower than a lot of these other markets. It's not a hot spot by any means, but the rents are consistent and the rents cash flow. And so you buy a house for $80,000 and it brings in $1,000 a month in rent and pays you $200-$300 for owning it. And you do a couple of those, and then you've got $1,500, $2,000 a month coming in that you can buy more houses with. And then, even if the rents only go up $50 on all, you have 10 doors, rents go up $50. Well, that's an extra $500 a month that your expenses probably didn't change much. So it's in the long term, it's a fun game.
Why do you think so many people struggle getting involved in real estate?
I think it goes back to getting around the right people. And so I first wanted to buy a duplex. We'll paint this picture. I bought this property for, I think the closing was like $79,500, something like that. And it was one side was currently rented for $550. So I thought reasonably the other side could rent for $550, but I'm going to live in it. And so I was paying $550 a month to live in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment and pay rent plus utilities. It's probably $600 a month. I bought this duplex and my monthly payment was like $585. So, okay, I'm paying $35 a month more to own a duplex with 2-bedroom, 1-bath units, and one of them pays $550. So now we're at $35 left over and utilities and whatever. So like I essentially went from paying $550 a month to live in an apartment to owning a building that I was pocketing $200 or $300 a month on, outside of maintenance and stuff. And when I moved out, that was true cash flow once I rented my side. But that deal, if I was to look at it right now, I would tell someone like, wow, that's a shoe-in. $80,000 property that's going to rent for $1,100 a month. That's an easy win. Go for it. I still had people trying to talk me out of it based on, well, what if you have to replace a toilet? Well, you budget for that. Well, what if you have a really bad tenant? You budget for that. What if they destroy the house? You have insurance for that. What if a tree falls on the roof? You have insurance for that. What if, and so it's who you choose to listen to. Because if you choose to listen to somebody who has never owned a house or has only owned their house and doesn't understand rental economics at all, they're not going to try to convince you to do it because it's scary to them. Like, they don't understand it. So why would they tell you, yeah, you should take that risk? It's awesome. So you got to get around people who own 10, 15, 20, 100 units, 1,000 units, right? Because it kind of goes back to the old adage, like, the person farther along the hiking trail is not going to be the one to tell you, like, hey, turn around, it's scary. It's the person behind you. Like, nobody who's successful in that area is going to tell you you're crazy for wanting to be successful in that area. The only people who are going to tell you that are people who don't do it. So, and it's funny because it's such simple advice, but people don't think of it that way. I wouldn't go and try to learn physics from my Spanish teacher. That seems really dumb. You would want to find a physics instructor, a physics professor. But when it comes to things like investing, people seem to take the advice of any and everyone without thinking through, like, well, is this somebody who I should really listen to? And I think that's really the thing that holds people back. I mean, yeah, there's some cash that it takes to buy houses sometimes, but I've bought houses zero down. I've bought houses zero down and zero interest from sellers. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of opportunities out there.
You got to find them. You have to know what you're looking for, know what a good deal is. It's all basic math. And once you learn, you're good to go. And there are a ton of free resources that are out there. I talk about Bigger Pockets all the time. It's a great place to learn without spending any money. And so go take the time to do that. Let's shift gears. One of the things I noticed you said is that our income is rarely the problem, but it's our expenses. What do you mean by that?
Again, it's another one of those really simple things. So I guess the credibility preface here is that I built this quote unquote real estate empire and this $1 million net worth on an active duty enlisted salary I bought my first house as a sergeant. So my taxable W-2 income wasn't $40,000. Now, when you factor in benefits and everything, it was closer to 60, 70, 80. But my taxable income was like $36,000 the year I bought that first house. And by the time I left the military, it was still under 45 for my taxable like W-2 income. And so I preface with the fact that, like, I didn't have the income, so I can justify the fact that that wasn't really the problem. The problem is people make $2,000, they spend $2,000. Then they start making $2,500 and they don't keep spending $2,000. They spend $2,500 and they let it creep. And so they never put money aside. They never save money. They spend every penny they have. They spend more than every penny they have. And they just don't ever put any effort into actually saving. So it's like, if you could just get your expenses a little bit under control, and you don't need to have a miserable life. Like, you could just, instead of eating out 7 days a week, maybe you eat out 1 or 2, instead of closing the bar down, getting drunk every night, maybe you buy a 6-pack from the grocery store for, the cost of 1 or 2 beers at the bar and drink at home. I don't know. Or just don't drink, but it's simple things that can really help you out. But I mean, even if you look at it from an apartment standpoint, if you make $1,000 in income and your expenses are, we'll say $700, you make $300. Well, if you increase the income to $1,100, you would think, oh, I made an extra $100. Well, no, not really, because that extra $100 is still taxed. And so you might make an extra $70 because you increase the rent to $100. Whereas if you cut your expenses from $700 to $600, that's a true $100 in your pocket because you were already paying taxes on that before the income or before the net. And if your tenant moves out and your expenses were $700, they're still $700. So you're still paying that amount. But if your tenant moves out and you had cut your expenses, you're still saving that, that $100. So it's just kind of the mentality shift where people go into an apartment and they think the first thing I should do is raise all the rents. Well, maybe, but what if the first thing you did was just put in, high efficiency filters on all your faucets in your apartment and your toilet and your shower head and swapped out lights for LEDs. And if you were paying utilities on that property, maybe you cut the utility expense by $200 or $300 on that property, and that's instant cash flow. And you can still increase the rents, but it's just kind of the mentality of like, if you can shrink your expenses as much as possible and then keep them down, then once you're conscious of that, you're less likely to spend every penny you make, so you can reinvest it all and it'll help you get wealthy faster.
Makes a lot of sense. We all spend more than we make. And if you turn that equation around, then you build wealth. Then once you build wealth, you get to do what you want. It's really a simple process. So you're also an author. You wrote the book, The No BS Guide to Military Life, How to Build Wealth, Get Promoted, and Achieve Greatness. So we've talked about wealth. How do you get promoted? Because there's a lot of politics in the military, isn't there?
I don't know that there's as much political as far as promotion as people want to say. I find that a lot of times that's the person who didn't get promoted is saying it was political. It's usually not the person who got promoted, right? So it's kind of like a one-sided coin, I suppose. So my take on that would just be to take ownership of it and focus on the things you can control. So in the military, the easy thing is stay in shape, go to the schools that make you competitive in your job, be the best you can at your job, and volunteer for additional duties. And you're going to be somebody that they want to promote. So it's just taking ownership. And so what I did in the book was I tried to create everything I wish I'd known when I joined the military. And I threw that section in because the one thing I did right was I got promoted very fast for that first few years until I reached the rank where it no longer matters how amazing you are at anything. You just have to wait 5 or 6 years until you're even looked at for promotion, and there's nothing you can do. But I got promoted pretty quick on the first five ranks in the military. And it was literally just because I was really good at my job. I was the go-to guy for everyone in my unit. I was in shape and people knew they could count on me. So when it came up for like promotions, it was like, oh, hey, there's a guy. We should go with him. But people overcomplicate that. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that in there. Like, hey, we're not only going to talk about how to use your 401k and how to do your finances, but we're also going to make this tangible as far as like, hey, if you get promoted, that's a way to increase your income without having to take on driving for Uber on the weekends, right? So, I think getting promoted is often underlooked. People want to do a side hustle. It's like, well, you might spend an extra 5 or 10 hours a week side hustling to make close to the same amount as you would get in a pay raise by just getting promoted, and you don't have to work the extra 5 or 10 hours. So
whether it's civilian life, military life, there is a process. Understand the process. At the end of the day, people who show up and do the work will find their way to the top of the list.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't matter where you are. A lot of people struggle with that, I think.
Yeah. And again, it seems you always get hate for saying things like this, but you don't hear the guy who got promoted complaining about how the system was rigged, right? You only hear the person who didn't get promoted. And the reason that is because they didn't get promoted. So obviously they're upset, blah, 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 blah. But like, it kind of makes you wonder, like, well, why didn't you get promoted, right? The thing is always like, it's like, okay, well, it's never, I could have done this better. It's always something else outside of my own circumstances is why I didn't get promoted. And that's the mentality you need to change. Because if you were thinking through, how could I get better? How could I do this better? How do I take ownership of this and change my own habits, behaviors, and performance at work to be that person who gets promoted? Like, don't get me wrong. There are definitely times, I'm sure, out there where people get hosed on things that they, or overlooked for promotion where they shouldn't. But I'd imagine that those are much fewer and farther between than the times where it's legitimately like, well, yeah, but you just didn't outperform that person.
And sometimes it's just that. In that particular situation, somebody was a better fit over you. You got to try again. Or at least in the civilian world, we get to job hop. And in today's market, the war for talent is raging. And so there are opportunities out there. If you're not thrilled with where you are, go somewhere else. And I remember one person I talked to, I'm like, you're underpaid. Go look around the market. They were like, no. I'm like, yes. And literally, they doubled their income. And they didn't even take the best paying job because they wanted a different atmosphere. And so they took the second best paying job. But still dramatic. I think a lot of times we don't realize what opportunities out there. And the longer we're somewhere, the longer I think, the more our eyes get closed to what's going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah, you get comfortable,
and you don't realize what's happening.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to me, especially right now in this environment. I've heard that similar story all over the place. It's always very interesting to me that their employer won't match. It's like this weird, like, oh, well, we don't think you're worth that because we've been paying you the same amount, so why would you pay you more? It's like, well, good luck filling my hole because I'm going to go take this job and someone else is going to want the same pay and they don't have any experience with the company.
And it's going to take them a year to figure out the systems and processes. And so the cost of turnover is astronomical. And companies don't usually match. Some do, but when they match, they tend to make your life miserable. So it's
That's
a
true.
catch-22, if it's not working and you've done your due diligence. So what I mean by that is you've had conversations with your supervisor and said, hey, this is what I'd like to do. What do I need to do it? Do what you need to do. And they don't do that, then sometimes it's time to go. A lot of big companies have too many rules and regulations. And so they don't allow the flexibility that they should. Hopefully that's changing, but choices that people make. So the next part of that is achieve greatness. How do we achieve greatness?
I'll be honest, that was just a catchy, you have to do things in threes, right? So I had to have a third thing. But I think the reality is that becoming the best version of yourself is the achieve greatness. So I talk a lot in the back part of the book on personal developments, like my morning routine and books that I recommend and ways that I've found to really focus on enhancing my day-to-day life. So whether that's through journaling in the morning, which I do unless I'm in Park City and don't do anything that I'm supposed to do in a normal routine. Journaling every day about my goals, about my job, about what or not my job. I don't have one of those anymore. My day, what I'm going to do hour by hour by hour. And really digging into like planning out the day and then sticking to it. These habits are what help you achieve greatness or success or however you want to view it. It's becoming the fullest version of yourself. It's getting in shape. It's taking control of your life. It's becoming financially free. It's spending time with your family. It's the GoBundance pillars, right? Spending, the contributions and authentic relationships and building wealth and going on bucket list adventures and really just growing into this person where like you're a joy for people to be around. And I think, for everybody, their definition of greatness is different, right? So I can't define like, oh, this is how you're going to achieve greatness. But what I can do is tell you like, hey, no matter what you're trying to achieve in life, if you can master like some of these things for personal development and some of these habits, and you can learn how to block your schedule and you can learn how to be more productive with your time and you can learn how to think outside the box and you can learn how to create additional streams of income and you can learn how to live below your means and all these things, like whatever your definition of greatness is, I'm pretty sure that if you were able to just completely build your own life, like the life of your dreams and focus on it, like you're going to get there. So it's kind of just more the mentality of like, how do we get around people that we want to be? And how do we find that success by following, the clues that have been left by those before us?
And there are clues. And if you follow them and do the work, you will achieve success. And you just have to show up. That's 90% of the battle.
It's consistency. I mean, getting wealthy is not complicated. It's fairly simple. It's just doing the same thing a whole bunch over and over and over again.
So it sounds like you started reading more.
I do not read physically as much as I should because I do retain better, but I Audible like crazy. I probably read 60 or 70 books on Audible last year. I'm at like 240 books since I first read Rich Dad Poor Dad in 2015 on Audible. And then probably what I do is I'm at the point now where it's like super chipmunk speed. So I listen at like 2.5 times, but I've slowly built up to that. So I comprehend most. I'm obviously not comprehending every single thing that I hear, especially if the author speaks a little fast, I might slow it back down. But and I tried to do like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and that book was not possible on chipmunk speed. So, but most of the time I'm reading at 2.5x. And what I'm doing is when you read a book, I mean, there's probably 20% of the stuff in that book that actually matters. So if you can just pick out those little pieces, you're good. And what I'll do is if I get to the end of a book, like Traction by Gino Wickman is a prime example of this. I got to the end of that book and I was like, oh my gosh, this book is incredible. I need to double down on this. So I bought the physical copy and I read through it and I highlighted through it. And then I read through it a third time and I just read the highlighted parts. And so it's like, that's one that I've retained probably 90% of the stuff in the book, or at least know where to find all the stuff I wanted to retain. And so that's kind of my strategy is like, just listen to 1 million books. And then the ones that really seem like, oh, this one will impact me. And then I buy the physical copy. And although my ego is kind of trying to get me to buy all the books I've listened to so I can put them on a bookshelf, but
it looks very impressive, kind of like mine.
Yeah, I'm building it out, but that's expensive. I don't realize I don't think it hit home how many books I'd read till I started ordering them, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like easily like $8,000 worth of books.
I never did that calculation.
The Audible's not that bad, but then you start ordering the hard copy because I prefer hard copy to soft copy, and you order like Like, and then I was like, oh, I love Nassim Taleb. I'm going to order his box set, and like $120. I'm like, man, having this bookshelf is really expensive, but it looks cool. And the books that are on there right now are the ones that really matter to me. So whether I fill that in with the ones that were just okay or not ever, who knows? If I do, then we'll know it was an ego thing.
Ego with books is probably one area that I'll forgive.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there anything else we should have talked about today that we did not get a chance to touch on?
I think we dug into most of the basics. I mean, the reality is the answer to all of this is very simple. If you can figure out how to live below your means, increase your income, and find people who you want to have similar lives to and get close to them, like, then that's the way you're going to achieve whatever that looks like, right? If you want to get good at football, go join a football team and get around football coaches. If you want to get good at swimming, go join a master swim class. If you want to, anything you want to do. But for some reason, when it comes to money, people think, well, I'll just listen to my broke friends. And so I think if you could stop listening to your broke friends and listen to people who have money, you'll be a lot farther along in life.
I'll say amen to that. Hey, if people would like to find you, your book, what's the best place for them to look for you?
From militarytomillionaire.com, or at this point, I think you can just kind of Google Military Millionaire, and we're on every social platform and kind of all over the place. So we primarily help service members and veterans learn how to build wealth through real estate and entrepreneurship and personal finance. But I would say kind of the 80-20 principle, right? 80% of what we talk to is applicable to anybody at all. It's just once you get into like the VA loan and the military specific 401k, maybe not so much, but the concept's the same. It's just different products.
That it is. You just have to adapt it to the language that you're used to working with. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Rocky. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
What I loved about meeting people at GoBundance is how they find a way to be successful. There's no excuses. I've known David for quite a while. We were part of a podcasting mastermind group, and his co-host and I are probably going to work on a project together soon. It's a small world. What can you implement based on the conversation that we had today? Is real estate right for you? I'll be honest, it is not for everyone. And the other thing is there's a lot of different ways to get involved with real estate. And remember, it's not about how much you make, it's how much you keep. There are plenty of people out there with a very high income and nothing to show for it. Hey, can you do me a favor? Who do you know who would enjoy this episode? Can you share it with them? Because it would help them grow and inspire them to take action. I'd appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.